Today we'll explore 3 haunting stories of caving expeditions that went terribly wrong. These tales are a sobering reminder of the perils that lurk in the dark, silent depths of the earth. Beneath the Earth's surface lies a world few ever dare to explore. Caves, with their stunning formations and labyrinthine passages, have fascinated humans for centuries. But these underground realms are as dangerous as they are beautiful. They demand respect, caution, and preparation, for even the smallest mistake can lead to tragedy. Viewer discretion advised. Trapped beneath the earth, the unforgiving tunnel tragedy. Beneath the Earth's surface lies a hidden world of wonder and danger. For adventurers, caves offer a glimpse into ancient, untouched beauty. But for one explorer, what began as an exhilarating discovery turned into a nightmare. This is the story of Marcus Grant, a skilled caver who found himself trapped in a battle against time and the elements, deep within the confines of Granite Hollow. Marcus Grant was no stranger to caving. At 34, he had spent nearly 2 decades exploring some of the most intricate cave systems in the Midwest. But Granite Hollow, nestled in the rugged terrain of Missouri, had always eluded him. Known for its narrow passages and unpredictable rockfalls, it was a place few dared to enter. For Marcus, it represented the ultimate challenge. On February 10th, Marcus ventured into the hollow alone, armed with his trusted gear and a determination to map out an unexplored passage he'd heard whispers about. The entrance was tight, barely wide enough to crawl through, but after hours of squeezing and inching forward, Marcus broke into an incredible chamber, a vast cavern adorned with shimmering stalactites and delicate crystal formations. It was the discovery of a lifetime. Elated, Marcus began documenting his find, snapping photos and sketching rough maps. But time was slipping away, and the dim glow of his headlamp reminded him that his batteries were running low. With his heart still racing from the thrill of discovery, Marcus decided to head back, retracing the narrow, twisting path he'd taken to reach the chamber. As he slid his body through one particularly tight crawl, disaster struck. His foot dislodged a loose rock above, sending a cascade of debris crashing down into the passage. Marcus screamed as his left leg was pinned beneath a heavy boulder, the sharp edges biting into his ankle. Dust filled the air, and the oppressive silence of the cave returned, broken only by Marcus's labored breaths. Trapped in complete darkness, Marcus knew he was in trouble. He couldn't free his leg no matter how much he strained against the boulder. His arms were pinned against his sides, limiting his range of movement. Hours passed, and the cold began to seep into his bones. Water droplets from the cave ceiling splashed onto his face, a cruel reminder of the time ticking by. As night turned to day, Marcus clung to hope. His fiancée, Claire, would report him missing when he failed to return home. Surely someone would come, but the oppressive silence of the cave wore on him. He screamed for help, his voice echoing uselessly through the tunnels. Exhaustion set in, and Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness. By the morning of February 12th, Marcus's absence had been noticed. Local authorities and experienced cavers arrived at Granite Hollow, forming a rescue team. The initial effort was slow. The entrance was so tight that many rescuers couldn't fit through. It wasn't until Marcus's friend and fellow caver, Ben Torres, arrived that progress was made. Ben, smaller and wiry, managed to squeeze through the tight passage and reach Marcus. The sight was grim. Marcus was pale, shivering and delirious from dehydration and pain. Ben offered him water and reassured him, but freeing Marcus was another matter entirely. The boulder trapping his leg was wedged deep into the rocky floor, and every attempt to move it risked causing another collapse. Over the next 48 hours, the rescue team worked tirelessly, hauling in tools and rigging ropes in the confined space. Engineers proposed drilling a vertical shaft to reach Marcus, but the process would take days. Time Marcus didn't have. The only other option was to chisel away at the boulder while stabilizing the tunnel with wooden beams. It was risky, but there was no choice. One by one, rescuers took turns chipping at the rock, but the tight space made the work agonizingly slow. Marcus's condition worsened. His voice grew faint, and he often drifted into unconsciousness. Rescuers relayed updates to Claire, who waited anxiously outside the cave, refusing to leave. On the evening of February 15th, just as progress seemed within reach, disaster struck. A section of the tunnel collapsed, sealing off the passage to Marcus entirely. Rescuers were forced to retreat, leaving him trapped once again. Outside the cave, a somber silence fell over the rescue team. For the first time, they faced the possibility that Marcus might not make it out alive. Engineers hastily redirected efforts to dig the vertical shaft. Volunteers worked around the clock, their determination unwavering despite the grueling conditions. But the dig was painfully slow, hindered by rain and unstable soil. On February 20th, after 10 days underground, rescuers finally broke through to Marcus's location. But their relief quickly turned to heartbreak. Marcus had succumbed to his injuries just hours before they reached him. The exhaustion, cold, and dehydration had taken their toll. His body was carefully removed and brought to the surface, where Claire and his family waited. The nation mourned the loss, captivated by the story of his bravery and the heroic efforts to save him. Marcus Grant's story serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers lurking in the depths of the earth. For all its beauty, the underground world demands respect and preparation. Though Marcus's journey ended in tragedy, his passion for exploration and the relentless efforts to save him remain an enduring testament to human resilience and courage. Story 2. A Race Against Time. The Frozen Tomb of Glacier Hollow. High in the icy wilderness of Alaska lies Glacier Hollow, a cave system carved by centuries of glacial melt. Known for its translucent ice walls and otherworldly blue glow, the cave is as dangerous as it is breathtaking. Every winter, as temperatures plummet and the ice shifts unpredictably, only the most experienced adventurers dare to enter. For one group of cavers, an ill-timed expedition would turn into a desperate fight for survival. On February 3, 2018, 3 seasoned cavers, Emily Harper, Nate Carter, and Ryan Hale, set out to explore a newly discovered section of Glacier Hollow. The group had tackled extreme environments before, but this would be their first winter expedition in the region. Their goal was to map out the cave's unexplored depths and document its stunning formations. The team arrived at the entrance just before dawn. Armed with insulated gear, ice axes, and a detailed plan, they descended into the shimmering expanse of the cave. The entrance tunnel gave way to a vast chamber, its walls glistening with frost. Beams of sunlight filtered through thin layers of ice, casting an ethereal glow. Emily, the team leader, marveled at the sight. "This is why we do this," she whispered, her voice echoing softly. The group pressed deeper, navigating narrow passages and icy crawls. By midday, they reached the new section, a labyrinth of interconnected chambers filled with ice columns and delicate crystal formations. Ryan, the youngest member, was tasked with photographing the site while Emily and Nate marked the route. They moved methodically, aware that time was against them. The cave's temperature dropped rapidly after sunset, and shifting ice could block their path at any moment. As the afternoon waned, Nate noticed the first sign of trouble. The ice beneath his feet cracked ominously as he stepped into a narrow corridor. He froze, motioning for the others to stop. "We need to turn back," he said, his voice tense. Emily hesitated, glancing at the partially mapped route. "We're close," she argued. "If we leave now, we'll have to start over." But Nate was firm. "The ice is too unstable. If we wait, we might not make it out." Reluctantly, the group agreed and began their retreat. The return journey was slower than expected. Ryan slipped on a patch of black ice, injuring his wrist, and the narrow passages that had been manageable earlier now seemed tighter as frost thickened on the walls. By the time they reached the main chamber, darkness had fallen, and their headlamps cast eerie shadows on the glistening ice. Then it happened. A low rumble echoed through the chamber, followed by a deafening crack. The ceiling shifted, sending chunks of ice cascading to the floor. The group scattered, diving for cover as a massive slab of ice collapsed, sealing the entrance. Panic set in. Emily scrambled to her feet, her breath visible in the freezing air. "Is everyone okay?" she called out. Nate and Ryan emerged from the shadows, shaken but unharmed. The three huddled together, staring at the blocked exit. "What now?" Ryan asked, his voice trembling. Emily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "We find another way out." But the cave offered little hope. The passages they had mapped earlier looped back into the main chamber, and the unexplored sections were too unstable to risk. The temperature continued to drop, and their insulated gear provided little comfort against the biting cold. The group rationed their supplies, sharing a small thermos of hot tea and a few protein bars. Nate worked tirelessly to chip away at the ice blocking the entrance, but progress was slow. Hours turned into a freezing eternity, and the group's spirits began to falter. By the second day, the cold had taken its toll. Ryan's injured wrist was swollen and stiff, making it difficult for him to help. Emily's fingers were numb, and Nate's face was pale from exhaustion. Despite their dire situation, they clung to hope, knowing that friends back at the base camp would raise the alarm when they failed to return. On the morning of February 5th, a rescue team arrived at Glacier Hollow. Experienced ice climbers and cavers worked tirelessly to locate the group, but the shifting ice and freezing temperatures made progress agonizingly slow. By evening, the team managed to breach the outer section of the cave, but the passage to the main chamber was still blocked. Inside the chamber, Emily, Nate, and Brian were on the brink of collapse. Their headlamps had died, plunging them into darkness. The cold seeped into their bones, and their breaths came in shallow gasps. Ryan's voice was barely audible as he muttered, "Do you think they're coming?" Emily forced a weak smile. "They'll come. Just hold on." The breakthrough came in the early hours of February 6th. Rescuers used thermal imaging to pinpoint the group's location and began carving a new passage. When they finally reached the main chamber, the sight was harrowing. Emily and Nate were huddled together, barely conscious, while Ryan lay motionless nearby. Medics rushed the group to the surface, wrapping them in thermal blankets and administering warm fluids. Ryan was airlifted to the nearest hospital, suffering from severe hypothermia and frostbite. Emily and Nate, though weak, were stabilized on-site before being transported to safety. In the aftermath, the team reflected on their ordeal. Emily blamed herself for pushing too far, while Nate credited their survival to sheer determination and teamwork. Ryan, who lost partial use of his wrist to frostbite, remained optimistic. "We made it out," he said. "That's what matters." Glacier Hollow stands as a stark reminder of nature's power and unpredictability. For all its beauty, the cave demands respect and preparation. The team's story is a testament to resilience, a harrowing tale of survival in one of the world's harshest environments. The last story of today's episode, The Abyss of Shadow Rift, a descent into terror. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains lies Shadow Rift, a cave system veiled in mystery and legends of lost explorers. Known for its narrow crevices, sharp drops, and eerie silence, the cave is both a wonder and a nightmare for adventurers. In the summer of 2014, a group of 3 friends set out to explore its uncharted depths, unaware of the harrowing ordeal that awaited them. The trio consisted of Sarah Blake, a seasoned spelunker with a reputation for fearless exploration, her partner David Lang, an amateur geologist fascinated by Shadow Rift's unique formations, and Marcus Green, a childhood friend whose curiosity often outpaced his caution. Their plan was to document a series of unexplored vertical shafts rumored to connect to a hidden underground lake. On July 8th, they arrived at the entrance of Shadow Rift, a gaping maw concealed by thick foliage. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying a faint metallic tang. Sarah led the way, her headlamp cutting through the darkness. "Stay close," she warned. "Shadow Rift isn't forgiving." The descent began smoothly. The group navigated tight corridors and slippery rocks, their laughter echoing faintly. David stopped frequently to examine mineral deposits, while Marcus joked about finding buried treasure. The mood was lighthearted until they reached the first vertical drop, a 90-foot shaft leading into the lower caverns. Sarah rigged the ropes with practiced efficiency, triple-checking the knots. One by one, they rappelled down, the beam of their headlamps revealing the cavern below. The walls shimmered with quartz veins, and stalactites hung like daggers from the ceiling. It was breathtaking, but Sarah remained vigilant. "This is where things get tricky," she said, pointing to a narrow tunnel that sloped sharply downward. The group crawled single file through the tunnel, their progress slow but steady. The passage opened into a vast chamber, its floor littered with jagged rocks and pools of murky water. At the far end, a fissure dropped into darkness, the rumored entrance to the underground lake. Marcus peered over the edge, his excitement palpable. "This is it," he exclaimed. "We're the first ones here." But Sarah wasn't convinced. The fissure was narrow, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, and the jagged edges looked treacherous. "We need to be careful," she cautioned. "This isn't a place to take risks." Ignoring her hesitation, Marcus volunteered to go first. He secured a rope around his waist and began his descent. The walls of the fissure were cold and slick, and his progress was slow. "It's tight," he called up, his voice echoing, "but I can make it." Halfway down, disaster struck. A chunk of rock gave way under Marcus's weight, sending him plummeting several feet before the rope caught him. His scream reverberated through the chamber as his body slammed against the wall. "I'm stuck!" he yelled, his voice laced with panic. Sarah and David scrambled to help, but the narrow fissure made it nearly impossible to maneuver. "Hold on, Marcus!" Sarah shouted, her mind racing. She rappelled partway into the fissure, bracing herself against the walls. Marcus was wedged in a tight section, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle. "I can't move," he said, his breath ragged. "My leg. It's bad." The sight was grim. Marcus's leg was pinned between two jagged rocks, and blood seeped through his pants. Sarah tried to free him, but every attempt caused him to cry out in pain. "We need more leverage," she muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. David, still at the top of the fissure, rigged a pulley system to lift Marcus, but the angle was wrong, and the rope strained under the weight. Hours passed as they struggled, their headlamps casting flickering shadows on the cavern walls. The cold seeped into their bones, and the oppressive darkness felt like it was closing in. As night fell, Sarah made a difficult decision. "I'll stay with Marcus," she said. "David, you have to go for help." David hesitated, glancing at the narrow tunnel they had crawled through. "Are you sure?" Sarah nodded. "It's the only way." David climbed back through the tunnel, his heart pounding. The route that had felt exhilarating earlier now seemed endless and claustrophobic. His headlamp flickered, threatening to die, and every sound made him jump. When he finally emerged into the open air, it was nearly dawn. He called emergency services, and within hours a rescue team arrived. Experienced cavers equipped with advanced tools descended into Shadow Rift. But the complexity of the cave and the tight fissure posed significant challenges. Meanwhile, Sarah did everything she could to keep Marcus calm. She wrapped him in an emergency blanket and shared the last of their water. "We're getting out of here," she said, her voice steady despite her fear. Marcus managed a weak smile. "You always were stubborn," he whispered. The rescue team reached the chamber by midday, but extracting Marcus proved to be an ordeal. The fissure was too tight for heavy equipment, forcing rescuers to use hand tools to chip away at the rock pinning his leg. Every movement sent debris cascading into the darkness, and the risk of further collapse loomed over them. After 12 grueling hours, they managed to free Marcus. His leg was badly broken, and he was suffering from hypothermia and dehydration. The team carefully hoisted him to the surface, where paramedics stabilized him before rushing him to the hospital. Sarah and David emerged shortly after, their faces pale and eyes hollow. The sunlight felt surreal after days in the suffocating darkness. "We made it," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We're alive." Marcus spent weeks recovering, his leg requiring multiple surgeries. The ordeal left the trio shaken, their passion for caving tempered by the harsh reality of its dangers. Shadow Rift, once a symbol of adventure, became a haunting reminder of the fine line between exploration and survival. Their story serves as a cautionary tale for adventurers everywhere. No matter how prepared or experienced, the unpredictable nature of the Earth's depths can test even the strongest. In Shadow Rift, courage and determination saved 3 lives. Now watch this video right here because it's a perfect fit for you. I'll see you on the other side.